What do you think we should do as a country or as Africans?
Yeah. Okay. Ignorance is expensive, and that's what I say. Like, ignorance is expensive, and there are people out there that will take advantage of that ignorance. And so, we as a country, we as a people, we need to see, wake up. And I just attended, Rice last week was hosting a workshop of intellectual property. So it's really important to educate yourself and create programs. So where once you have whatever it is that you have, if it's an idea, is it going to be copyrighted? Is it
whether programs are meeting the objectives of why they have been instituted. And the reason why I went to study this in livelihoods is because I wanted to know these livelihoods, which normally encompasses agriculture and other rural survival skills by farmers and the rural people, whether the practices which are done in those places, they are enabling, particularly in monitoring and evaluation, because this is an NGO that does projects, whether those practices are enhancing the program, particularly this livelihood program, which is implemented by Caritas, whether it is performing. And to underscore this livelihood, we have several others here who have given us some parameters to understand that the livelihood is this capacity, assets, and activities that are necessary for daily needs of an individual. So this is by Chambers and Kone. We have others that have said that livelihood encompasses agricultural and non-agricultural activities which together provide food. So when we talk about livelihood, there are those activities that give people in the rural areas ways of living and income and of course food. So knowledge management, because I'm intending to I investigated this knowledge management, which includes knowledge sharing as an independent variable. We are considering it here as being a variable that also influences the performance of the project. Now, what is the problem in this research? We note that performance of our project is a result of various contributing factors, but Kamau and Mohamed, 2015, they mentioned that M&E is part of what can influence the performance of a project or a program. And the situation of M&E in Kenya, it has been said that it is weak. So we want to observe this situation of M&E, particularly in these programs, and see how do they influence, how does that influence the performance. And I chose Caritas as an area to research because Caritas operates in arid and semi-arid parts of Meru area, which includes part of Meru County and part of Tharaka-Nithi. And these people, this organization operates in those situations which they normally are underfunded. So we are seeking, because in those situations, this Caritas organization normally does work under very difficult conditions to illiterate people, to people who are not very learned, and we want to see the practices that they carry out there, particularly whether there is knowledge sharing that enables this project to perform. The objective, and one objective, and this is to determine the influence of monitoring and evaluation knowledge sharing on the performance of livelihood program, focusing on Caritas, with another hypothesis where I hypothesized that monitoring and evaluation knowledge sharing has no significant relationship with the performance of this program. So we intended just to share, to study about the knowledge sharing. On the methodology, I carried out this study in Meru and the Tharaka-Nithi counties, choosing only 5. I sampled 5 sub-counties, and in these 5 sub-counties, I targeted a population of 465 persons. These were farmer leaders, 441 of them, and the 21, they are the project staff of Caritas Meru, and the 3 senior managers. So using this sampling formula Cooper and Shindra, I calculated and got a sample of 215 persons, where 191 were farmers, 21 they were Caritas project staff, and 3 senior managers. And during this study, I used 3 tools. I used questionnaire, which I carried a survey of those farmer leaders. I also used an interview guide for the managers, and the FGD. I got samples from those farmer leaders, and I did an FGD with their focus group discussion. On the results, the return rate of the questionnaires was 98.4%. The farmer leaders, for the project staff, the return rate was 90.4%, and all the managers, senior managers, they attended the interview that I scheduled, so 100%. The general presentation, the males were 21.9%, and the females were 78.1%. And because since this questionnaire was a Likert type question, and with a value of 1 to 5, each of the question element and a value which I gave it, but then at the end of it all, I got a composite mean. So we got a composite mean of 3.95. This is for knowledge sharing, and this shows that the majority agreed that monitoring and evaluation knowledge sharing was practiced in that livelihood program at Caritas. The composite mean for performance of livelihood was 3.87, which was also an agreement that there was performance of this project. When we tested the correlation, we got those figures in this table. This is a table of M&E knowledge sharing and performance of livelihood program correlation. And the result shows that there was a positive correlation between monitoring and evaluation knowledge sharing and the performance, with the p-value of 0, but where p is less than 0.001. In conclusion, I want to give a conclusion. There is a statistically significant relationship between M&E knowledge sharing and the performance of livelihood program implemented by Caritas. And therefore, the null hypothesis of this study was rejected, and we took the research hypothesis. So in conclusion, we conclude that the study, or rather, because we gave some conclusion ahead there, we give recommendations here, is that these findings can be used by M&E practitioners. The county and national government can use them to do policies that will govern M&E in counties. And therefore, this research can be used for various purposes, particularly for even reducing cost of training. Because knowledge sharing, when people share knowledge within an organization, this knowledge enables that organization to reduce the cost of training. People get knowledge from their staff and what they go through. And of course, the other implication is that knowledge sharing will unlock personal potential for personal staff. And this part of the references, I don't know whether you can be able to read, but there are a number of references there about this study, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bwana Julius, for the presentation. Thank you for appreciating. So, members, we presented on M&E knowledge sharing and the performance of Caritas. So, if there is any question for him or any comments, you are welcome. So, Joshua, it's like there is no question for you. Means they are satisfied. But how did you measure the performance?
The performance of the project, I used a questionnaire. And this questionnaire is what gave me this composite value. It's a composite value here I have mentioned of 3.87 because I used a Likert scale of 1 to 5. 1 is disagree, and 5 is agree. So within that, I found that within that range, the 3.87 was tending towards agree. And therefore, most of those who were interviewed agreed there was performance within that project. And as you realize, the sample which I had was huge, so I took that one as a meaning that there was performance within that project.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we can call upon the next presenter. Unless maybe you have a question, Dr. Julius.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation, Bwana Joshua. But I think the question the dean has asked is like, for me, it's not answered. How did you measure performance? So my friend here, I'm asking for a friend, she's asking me, what is Caritas Meru? I'm still lost, I am not able to answer the question. And when we talk about a composite measure, that means there were independent measures that probably you aggregated to come up with one measure. So I thought that's what Dr. Sharma was asking. Otherwise, keep up the presentation, is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. But this a mean of all the replies from that study is what gave the performance. The perception of the persons that were interviewed, the perceptions they gave. You know that scale of 1 to 5, and 5 is those who agreed with the questions that I gave. And the questions of that interview about the performance were 10 of them. In the 10 of questions that which were implying about the performance. And when they gave an affirmation towards that agreement, I took the average, the mean of all the responses, and this is what I got. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's also appreciate him again. Thank you. We call upon the next presenter to do a presentation on financial constraints. Dr. Julius Idai.
Mwanga, presenting with Dr. Idai JK. So the topic is financial constraint, firm size, and investment cash flow sensitivity of non-financial firms listed in the Nairobi Securities Exchange of Kenya. The background of the study, it was based on the high cost of external finance has forced some firms to basically remain with an option of having internal finances in running most of the investments. And secondly, from various studies that have been done, like from Fezari et al. And Ajay et al., we have been having mixed reactions. Some have been showing positive relationship between the variables, others have been showing negative relationships. Now, the firm size is also a very important or very significant factor when you are dealing with financing decisions. Then we have theories, that's the trade-off theory, the pecking order theory, and the agent theory, which are very, very vital. And they support that a firm can use debt financing, and yet it's not true because some of the firms cannot go for external finances. Motivation of the study: the financial crisis of the 21st century has raised concerns on the efficiency and the perfectness of financial markets. And evidence from World Bank has also proved that some of these non-financial firms are characterized by decline in the financial performance. And the government of Kenya, in realization of the Vision 2030 and the SDGs, can be a challenge if at all we are not very, very keen. Definition of variables: we have financial constraints, as I've already said. This is a situation whereby a firm is only limited to use its internal revenues, and getting external revenues or sources of income, it is a very, very big challenge to them. Cash flow sensitivity. This is where a coefficient relating to the changes arising from the decisions at capital investment and cash flows related from firms' internal sources. A firm size is basically the operation of a firm in any given industry, and we are looking at the log of sales and the asset base. The context of study: the study was we are looking at majorly non-financial firms listed at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Research gaps: we had 3 research gaps: conceptual gap, we had a methodological gap. So on the conceptual gap, the most reviewed literature has been only focusing on direct effect of financial constraints and investment cash flow sensitivity. However, in this study, we are going to look at the firm size being a mediating factor on the financial constraints. The contextual gap is that the focus of the previous literature has been only focusing on manufacturing sector, and this has been done on only developed countries such as the USA, Europe, and China. This one we are looking at it at NSE in Africa, specifically on non-financial firms. Methodological gap: the literature reviewed indicate a single factor, that's a univariate. Our study, we shall use multiple factors relating the 2 independent and dependent variables. Those were the objectives, and I'll move to the literature review. We were using 3 theories: the trade-off theory, the agent theory, and the pecking order theory. And after analyzing the 3, the pecking order theory was the most important in that a firm will only prefer to finance new investment by first seeking internal retained earnings, then debt, and finally the issue of new equity. That is our conceptual framework. It is self-explanatory. Actually, we are having 3 hypotheses, having the independent and the dependent variables. Now, the hypothesis 1 was financial constraints and investment cash flow sensitivity relationship among non-financial firms listed at the NSE is not significant. And number 2, the effect of firm size on the relationship between financial constraints and investment cash flow security among non-financial firms listed at the NSE is not significant. The 4th one was we are looking at the joint effect of the financial constraint and the firm size on the sensitivity of non-financial firms listed at the NSE. Research methodology, we used positivism philosophy. We adapted descriptive research design. The target population, we targeted only the non-financial companies, which are 48. But we ended up having 33. We dropped 15 because of non-consistency in the data available. The period of the study was 2012 to 2021, so that we can get the most recent data. Data collection, we utilized panel data, which consists of both time series and cross-section. Analysis was done in 3 stages: descriptive, inferential, and diagnostic stages. So these were the results. Because of time, I'll move. We look at the hypothesis. All of them were rejected. The hypotheses were rejected. The summaries of the findings. Now, profitability was found to be statistically significant, and the firm size is seen as a mediator on the financial constraints. There was also a significant joint effect between the firm size and financial constraints on the effect of the sensitivity. Conclusions. Firm size mediated the relationship between financial constraints. And also financial constraints and firm size contributed to increase an investment on the cash flow of sensitivity of non-financial firms listed at the NSE. Contribution of the study on various fields. This study is very, very relevant in that first, it will contribute to the existing body of the knowledge in the area of the financial constraints, firm size, and investment cash flow. Secondly, the finding of this study will be useful to various stakeholders such as the government, corporate managers, in light of their decision making. The study will also contribute by providing empirical evidence on the applicability of the trade-off theory and the pecking order theory in the context of the emerging markets like Kenya. A limitation of the study. Actually, the study used only firm-specific factors, which were leverage and profitability. We were also limited only on secondary data. And further, the study was only limited to non-financial firms listed at the NSE. Suggestions for further studies that we can focus on the financial institutions or firms. We can also use both secondary and primary data for triangulation of results. And finally, further, the study can be carried out on firms listed at the East African capital markets for comparable results. Thank you.
Thank you, Kennedy, for that presentation.
Yes.
Now, let's appreciate Kennedy, please. Now, let's have some questions, comments for Kennedy to improve his work.
Thank you for the presentation. I just want to take us back to the conceptual framework. No. The conceptual framework, there is a H03, which is a mediated relationship between the independent variable and dependent variable. And there is also the H2. What's the difference between the two?
Well, you said H3? H3 is for the joint effect of both the financial constraints and the firm size. That's for H3. H2, we are looking at the firm size and the investment cash flow sensitivity. H3 is the joint effect.
Any other question? Maybe just a few comments.
Yes.
Yeah, though maybe not follow well because there is the flow is not well arranged.
Okay.
But what are the source of your data?
This was from financial statements, annual financial statements. Huh?
So it is economic data.
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned about 21st century. I don't know what are these crises that you call them 21st century crisis.
Can I welcome my colleague? Can't have him there.
Okay, Dr. Idai.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the question is the sort of crisis in the 21st century. And I think as we are all aware, there is increased stakeholder involvement in the corporate governance, whereby there are quite a number of agency issues which have emerged, such that the owners of the companies, the shareholders, are instinctively pushing the management to generate results, or rather create wealth for the shareholders. Of course, what we call shareholders wealth maximization model. So the stewardship, the issue is there have been quite a number of crises which have emerged. Key to those is the one which was experienced in around 2008 during the global economic crunch, which emerged, which was experienced globally because of the collapse of some financial institutions in the US. So from that time, there is pressure to the management from the stakeholders for producing results. So those are the ones we are talking about. And as you are also aware that the operating environment is getting worse off with the competition setting in, the government's tightening the belts. So out of the policies, of course, some of the companies have not been able to remain afloat. Few have been listed on that screen under the motivation of the study. Thank you. I hope you answered.
Yes, just something to add, and such challenges can be worked upon using the agency theory, which will minimize on some of these challenges.
Okay, thank you. You can appreciate him as he leaves. So our next presenter is Gladys and others. Gladys, are you there? Yeah, please take us through your presentation.
determinants that influence small and medium enterprises access to credit in Meru County. My supervisors are Elija Warukuka and Dr. Muta Munene. Introduction. Financial inclusion is a key component of any country's or inclusive social and political economic development. Access to credits is important for growth and prosperity of any firm within the economy. SACWA 2017. Access to credit improves firms' performance, facilitate market entry, growth of companies, and risk reduction. Small and medium enterprises are primary driving forces for job creation, decrease the unemployment, income generation, and have a grand role in the innovation and the technological progress. The small and medium enterprises sector in Kenya has limited access to finance due to the following. Small and medium SMEs are unable to operate because they don't fulfill the collateral requirements. They lack a guarantee scheme to back up banks' finances, and they incur high costs of administering small loans spread over big area. The statement of the problem: an estimated number of between 52% and 64% of small and medium enterprises in developing countries like Kenya have limited or no access to credit. Liquidity challenges created by limited access to credit contribute to SMEs eventual collapse during their infancy years. Majority of studies are focused on the influence of supply-side factors such as number of lending institutions, the collateral security required, and the interest rate charged on SMEs' access to credits. The current research study therefore sought to fill the gap in literature by investigating the factors that influence small and medium enterprises' access to credit in Meru County. My general objective. The general objective of this study was to establish the determinants that influence small and medium enterprises' access to credit in Meru County. The specific objectives were four: to determine the capacity to pay, to determine the influence of capacity to pay in access to credit by small and medium enterprises in Meru County, to establish the influence of collateral availability on access to credit by small and medium enterprises in Meru County, to investigate the influence of availability of information on access to credit by SMEs in Meru County, and lastly, to establish the influence of business risks on their access to credit by small and medium enterprises in Meru County. My research hypotheses were capacity to pay, collateral availability of information, and the business risks does not exert significant influence on access to credit by small and medium enterprises in Meru County. Theoretical framework. My study was anchored on two theories. Number one, information asymmetry theory, which states that when two parties are making decisions or transactions, there exists a situation where one party has more or better information than the other. And the theory is important in accessing the credit because it helps the small and medium enterprises with more information in accessing credit. Theory number two was pecking order theory, and it says that when the information asymmetries makes potential investors, internal management of a firm have more knowledge of real firm of the firm than external investors. And the firms view debt as risky than equity, because debt, it means that when you borrow money, you can be able to repay back in a period of time. But in equity, you exchange your assets or money for ownership, for a percentage of ownership to own the business. Conceptual framework. Independent variable. The independent variable, these are the influencers. For example, when you have asthma, when the smoke causes asthma, the smoke can be referred as independent variable, and the asthma be referred to dependent variable. The independent variable were capacity to pay, and the indicators were profitability, interest charged, savings, perception of financial institutions. Variable number two was collateral availability. The indicators are availability of logbooks, availability of land title deeds, and availability of guarantors. Availability of information is the variable number three, and it includes the indicators of listing by CRP, bookkeeping, and audited financial statements. Finally, the variable number four is business risks, which have the indicators of servicing a loan, age of a business, availability of financial records, and the stock turnover. The independent variable, which is as a result of the influences from independent variable include access to credit by small and medium enterprises, which have the following indicators: accessibility, pricing of products and services, and finally, timelines. Research methodology. A descriptive survey design was adopted in my study, and a descriptive survey, it included both qualitative and quantitative analysis. Qualitative analysis, it describes the characteristics, and the qualitative analysis, it includes the numerical, or it consists of numbers. The target population in this study consists of 4,810 small and medium enterprises in Meru County. The study proportionately sampled 84 respondents from the 9 sub-counties in Meru County. Primary data was collected using a questionnaire constructed by the researcher. Finally, descriptive and inferential statistics were used for analysis and of quantitative data and qualitative data. Results and discussion. In my study, I got the following results. The study administered a total of 34 questionnaires among different small and medium enterprises. A total of 297 questionnaires were filled and returned. This constitutes a return of 73.3%. And the study of 73.3% can be asserted that the return rate for the current study was very good. The results continued. Summary. The summary indicated that the residents in Meru County engage in diverse types of small and medium businesses. The study also indicated the majority of businesses had been in operation for over 2 years. It was also established that the majority of the respondents had never borrowed money. The results from variable number 1, the influence of capacity to pay. It was also established that even though some small and medium enterprises are not denied access to credit due to inability to pay, a significant number of SMEs are not able to get credit due to their inability to pay. It was established that the interest rate charged by financial institutions might stop the uptake of loans by small and medium enterprises. Regression analysis indicated that the capacity to pay positively and significantly influences access to credit. Variable number 2, the results were, it was established that the security is not a significant prerequisite for accessing credit. It was also found that vehicle logbooks and land title deeds are not part of the security required. It was established that most of the financial service providers require SME entrepreneurs to provide guarantors in order for them to access credit. Regression analysis indicated that the collateral affordability positively and significantly influenced access to credit. The result of variable number 3, affordability of information, included. The study indicated that the majority of financial providers do not consider the adequacy of bookkeeping when extending credit facilities to smaller and medium enterprises. It was found that some financial service providers do require financial statements when evaluating SMEs to grant credit services. Finally, the study also saw that a significant number of SMEs are listed negatively by CRP, and this might stop their accessibility to credit. The results from the final variable business risks indicated that the study showed that some financial institutions are unlikely to extend credit facilities to SMEs, which are still servicing loans, although others do not care about this. The study further indicated that some institutions are unlikely, while the others are likely to finance SMEs which are starting up. It was also established that the financial institutions consider the demand for products sold by SMEs while evaluating their creditworthiness. Regulation analysis indicated that business risks positively and significantly influence access to credit. My conclusions were SMEs which are capable of paying are likely to access credit from financial institutions in Meru County. Majority of SMEs in Meru County are able to access credit from financial service providers without necessarily having to provide collateral. SMEs which are posted with information listed about them by CRP are likely to access credit from financial services. Finally, SMEs which have minimal business risks are more likely to access credit from financial services providers than those which are venture in risk enterprise. Recommendations. SMEs ought to strive to improve their capability of repaying credit in order to access sufficient loans to enhance growth and development of their enterprises. SMEs should ensure they do not have negative listing by CRB to increase their chances of accessing credit. SMEs should work towards minimizing their business risks to improve their ability to access credit. Recommendation for my studies. A longitudinal study should be carried out to ascertain the influence of small and medium enterprises on their access to credit in Kenya. A study to be carried out to establish whether the unregistered SMEs in Meru County are able to access loans. Thank you.
Thank you, Gladys, for the presentation. Thank you. So let's ask the members to ask questions or recommendations on this presentation. Seems there is no question. Maybe just to ask, between those independent variables, which one is more significant than the other one?
Capacity to pay.
So capacity to pay is more significant than the other independent variables, eh? Okay. There is therefore some question or comments.
Thank you very much, Gladys, for that wonderful presentation. So, I can see you've recommended that we do a longitudinal study. I don't know why you are recommending a longitudinal study, how it could have differed with what you've done. That is one concern. Now, recently, the central bank has raised the lending rate by 1%. What do you think will be the impact of that rate by the central bank to the SMEs? And then the other concern probably, would you recommend that SMEs also list at the capital market so that they can enhance borrowing? What do you think? Does your study recommend any policy by the government to come up with venture capital for the startups? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you be able to respond or you can think about it? Or incorporate the comments in findings?
Noted, sir. I will incorporate the findings.
Okay. Thank you. Can appreciate her as she leaves. Our next presenter will be Bwana Wekesa on the effect of performance contracting strategies, elements, and is presenting with others. So, Bwana Wekesa.
Thank you. My name is Peter Wekesa. I'm co-presenting this with Dr. Elijah Alubuka and Dr. Kubaiso. My research was on performance contracting strategic elements affecting implementation of performance appraisal systems in public universities in Mount Kenya region. And background or information is a performance appraisal system is a standard process of obtaining, scrutinizing, and recording information about the relative worth of a worker. It assesses the achievement of an employee of an agreed target, of course, where an employee sits and you agree on the performance targets for a certain period. Then at the end of that period, you are able to do the assessment to see whether the employee achieved the targets that were agreed between the employee and the employer. So there are some strategic elements that come into play in this whole process, including leadership styles, monitoring and evaluation, training practices, employee attitudes, performance feedback, design of performance appraisal, organizational structure, and performance standards. For this study, we focused on 4 of those elements, that is training practices, monitoring and evaluation, employee attitudes, and organizational structure. And the problem statement, the implementation of performance appraisal systems has not been very successful in most public universities, despite the implementation of the performance appraisal system since 2005 in public universities, when the issue of performance management was launched by the late President Kibaki, and it has not been comparable to private sector to enable the public sector to meet the ever-changing and competitive global world, as well as meet the demanding of the well-informed citizen. So the general objective of this study was to determine the effect of performance contracting strategic elements on the implementation of performance appraisal systems in public universities within Mount Kenya region. And the Mount Kenya region, these are the 7 counties. We had Nyeri, Murang'a, Meru, Embu, and Kirinyaga, and Kiambu. Zimefika 7? Ama mmelala? There are 7. So thank you. So the objectives were to determine how organizational structure influences implementation of performance appraisal system in public universities in Mount Kenya region, then to determine how monitoring and evaluation influences implementation of performance appraisal systems, appraisal in public universities, then to determine how employee attitudes influences implementation of the performance appraisals, and then to examine the extent to which training influences the implementation of performance appraisal in public universities. 3 theories guided us in this study: the agency theory, the goal-setting theory, and the theory of planned behavior. The research methodology: this study adopted descriptive survey research design. The target population for this study was the staff, human resource officers, administrators, and finance officers in the 7 chartered public universities, as they were considered as the ones who are directly involved in the implementation of performance appraisal systems. And these are the universities within these Mount Kenya counties. That is, we had Meru University, Embu University, Chuka, we had Kirinyaga University, we had Moranga University. Yeah, there are seven public universities. Dedan Kimathi is also there. The target population for this study consisted of 2,423 respondents, from which a sample size was drawn. The sample size was 136 respondents from the 7 public universities in the region. Stratified random sampling was used in the study, and a questionnaire was used as a research instrument for this study. Quantitative data was analyzed by use of the descriptive statistics using SPSS version 20, and figures and tables were used to present the results. Research results, the study found that organizational structure, monitoring and evaluation, employee attitude and training had a positive and significant effect on the implementation of performance appraisals in public universities in Mount Kenya region. Then conclusion, the study was concluded that monitoring and evaluation of projects helped various project stakeholders, including the clients and the project financiers, which helped to improve the implementation of performance appraisal systems. In addition, use of monitoring and evaluation framework put in place contributed directly to the quality of the performance appraisal system. Recommendation, the universities must increase awareness of the employees about its goals, targets, and strategies. This will make it easier and smoother the introduction of performance appraisal systems, and afterwards the system itself will help to increase this awareness. The result recommended that universities should undertake training of their staff to improve implementation of performance appraisal system. When we were doing analysis of the results, it came out clearly that training was more significant, and it contributed significantly to the implementation of performance appraisal system. When staff or employees are not trained on how to set targets, on how to participate in the process, then the end result of the appraisal system is not accurate. So recommendation for further studies, the study sought to investigate the effects of performance contracting strategic elements on the implementation of PAS system in public universities within Mount Kenya region. So other studies can be conducted in other regions outside the Mount Kenya region, a wider scope that is. And then many other additional parameters can be considered in the measurement of performance contracting strategic elements. Since R squared was not 100%, for this study it was 72%, which was indicative that there are other strategic elements that contribute to the implementation of performance appraisal system that need further research and further study. So we had that publication. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bwana Wekesa. Let's appreciate him. Now, let's call upon the members to raise some questions, comments. Yes, Bwana Patrick.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. But there was a study which was done by Kirelia in 2020. And the study found campus ladies, especially from this university, to be too generous. The issue was when they appraised the lecturers, the ladies tend to award them more marks. So one of the questions is when you are conducting evaluation, performance evaluation, how really can you be able to remove biasness? Because an hand is a man who might earn marks just because of his sick, I would say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kesa. I think it's a good presentation, and it's a good work. My question, I don't know whether I'm in order. I'm from mathematics, and I can see you've done some analysis, but sometimes it's good, even if you don't have time, you can at least have that output, especially for the regression, and that results so that we are able to see. When you say that they are significant and that factors are doing well, you can be able to confirm that they are doing well. Okay, my question now was there are two. One, you said you have 136 sample size, isn't it?
Yes.
From 7 universities.
Yes.
So what was the distribution? How did you divide? Did you divide equally? And what was the selection in terms of what my friend said in terms of gender? So that we actually people, maybe, were you biased to give a university more, a higher sample than the others? So what was the distribution among the 7 universities, and in terms of the number, and also in gender? And the last one, you said your R squared was 72%. So what does that mean? Maybe briefly.
Thank you, Monakesa. Will you be able to respond, or?
I'll be able to respond maybe to two, because one is an input he has given.
Yes.
That is an area of improvement to be able to provide the statistical analysis. And in that statistical analysis, you'll be able to get how we were able to do the sampling and do the distribution among the 7 universities. On the question that Kireria talked about biasness during appraisal, that's why we realized that it's because most people are not trained on appraisal. The lack of capacity in undertaking appraisal is what leads to that biasness. So that somebody will score you based on how you appear, how you are talking. That is how they will be able to score you, and not based on the real aspects of performance that contribute to what we call performance in terms of output of the employee. So that is one thing that came out. But I take your comments positively. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It has been nice listening to a presentation from a different discipline. Mine is two comments. The first one is on your statement of the problem, on the use of generic terms, like your statement of the problem just says most without quantifying. I don't know whether that's an issue in your discipline. Then the second question I'd like to ask is, I'm assuming this work was done for a degree level, maybe master's and above, and I'd like to ask, what do you consider to be the contribution? What is your contribution in this research in terms of theory and practice? Thank you.
My contribution in terms of
if it's work done at a master's or a level and above, yes, you must contribute. Your research must have a contribution. Yes. So what is your contribution, either theoretically or practically?
My contribution, I've included them in the recommendation on further areas of study so that people can be able to be able to further study on the same field, in the same area of research. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but my co-presenter hapo nyuma anaweza nisaidia.
I think what she was asking is, what is the value of this research?
Yes.
Let me answer the first question about the contribution. We are coming up with a better tool of measurement, and I'm saying this taking into consideration what the first speaker asked about biasness. And so we will mount a better tool. 360 has been criticized, and we have seen the areas of criticism, and for sure, arising from this study, we'll have a better tool. Thank you.
Is another question?
Mine is not really a question, but an emphasize probably that you mentioned about a recommendation on training, and I know actually there's a gap there. So because you've already done the study and you realized that issue of the gap, just a call that should be done so that the findings is not just on the shelves. So kindly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm also following on what Dr. Agnes has said, that, and Dr. Elijah said that coming up with a better tool that is for Mary University. But the study was carried out in several universities. So are you going to give a copy to all those universities so that they come up with the recommended tool for evaluation?
Yeah, we've shared with a few, but we'll be able to reach out. We've shared with Embu and Kimathi. Yes.
Thank you. Maybe one final one. It's not about the question, but it's about the clarification. Last time we had a presenter looking at the human resource management practices and performance of the employees in county government. And he argued that the evaluation is insignificant in improving performance. What's your take on that?
Evaluation is significant?
Insignificant. What's your take on that?
It is because based on how you are evaluated, it will have an effect on your performance. When somebody is is scored low, then definitely depending with how the results are related to the person, they might feel demoralized, or they might take it up as an opportunity for them to improve. So the evaluation process and how the evaluation exercise is carried out has an effect on the performance.
Also, thank you. Also, I'm interested on, I need a clarification on the implication on policies, because you have said the recommendation, maybe to me, on my discipline, I can take them as on the basis of a theory. Maybe they contribute on the theory, what Ruth was asking, and what Dr. Walibuka has added about the tool, maybe the tools, and you have mentioned about training. I take them as practice, the contributions to the practice. What about the policies?
You cannot be able to effectively carry out a practice without a policy guideline. So definitely, as we come up with a tool, it will be incorporated, especially in the human resource policy, so that now training becomes part of the process, a part of the practice, because you cannot detach the two. You can't detach the practice and the policy. And the best approach of implementing it is to ensure that it is incorporated in the policy.
Thank you very much. I think your presentation attracted so much reaction from the members, a lot of contributions. Let's appreciate him as he leaves. Our last or not least presenter will be Bwana Patrick Kireria, and others will be presenting 3 articles or 3 papers. So I don't know how long will it take on each, because that will be around 30 minutes if you take 10 minutes each. Patrick, because you have 3 papers, you can summarize as much as possible so that you cannot tire yourself.
So, good evening. My name is Patrick Moni Kireria. I'm presenting this as a member of faculty. This is actually cutting construction costs with scissors, exploring possibilities of recycling plastic waste in Kenya. Is a funded research project by the Meru University of Science and Technology. I'm very brief because what I've done is to bring just a few slides and point out some items, so the details will be in the report. So we first of all focus on the summary that sustainability is the sum total of enhanced quality of life and derived from living in a healthy environment with improved socio-economic and environmental conditions, as was pointed out by these people. This project is an double-edged sword that does not only seek to rationally improve the quality of life, but seeks to do it with pressure, leaving people with that nostalgic feeling of beautiful, attractive, pleasing to see, nice to see, and like to cut. So actually, basically, the project, what it's trying to do is, I want to go to the dump wastes and get some waste plastic material, sort it, clean it, cut it, and then I can mold it into some material, actually scaffolding, which will be used when we are developing story buildings. Now, if I can go further, is that there are very many people interested in this, from individuals to nations. The beauty about this waste plastic is that it is readily available. There is no competition. Number two, it has got very high aesthetic value. The fact is that you can take it, warm it, And then when you hit it, you can shape it the way you want. How do we do this? The project thinks that if we can get scissors, but then there should be multiple scissors, and then they are rotating. Then at the end of the day, we can be able to chop plastic very easily. And then on top of that, the project, what actually it did was that it would involve the community. Because the community are the ones who produce this waste, so we encourage them not to dispose of it off poorly, then they should also sort it, and we encourage them a culture of recycling. What will be the end result of this? It was invested that we could commercialize. One of the things we could commercialize is shredding of waste plastic, because it is bulk. Then we can reduce the bulkiness and it will be easy to transport. Number two, the manufacture of cylinders. Number three, we can hire those trappers for those people who want to do construction. We can also manufacture them, but we can also train people and carry out consultancy on plastic waste and other management waste. As we've seen, clearly there is a problem because plastic use is widespread. This plastic waste negatively impacts on the natural world, and we have a problem which has been identified. If we now focus on Kenya, we realize that Kenya is among the 150 biggest plastic dump sites that have an adverse effect on the lives of 64 million. That was 2015, the entire population of France. So it is a really serious problem. The objective, of course, was we apply innovation. We can eat this plastic, we can cut it, we can do very many other things about it, and then we will be able to reduce pollution. We will develop a culture of shredding plastic, especially by collectors, and then at the end of the day, we can evaluate whether we can commercialize in various aspects. The justification of this stand is anchored on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which actually is the theme of this international conference. There are quite a number of them, but one of our international presenters was addressing them, so we could maybe later on more so refer to his arguments. Then if we come down here to Kenya, there is the Ocean Plastic Charter, which considers mostly what is happening in our oceans, and that is why the stand even focused on Mombasa and Kisumu. The Constitution of Kenya assures Kenyans to live in a clean and healthy environment as a right, not a privilege. How do we do this? Through this project. There is also the Vision 2030, the Big Four agenda, all encourage us to engage in making our environment cleaner. Now, the methodology which I adopted was documentary, trying to document what is happening. It was also experimental from the topic, because we were exploring possibilities, but they were not defined, and they later presented problems, which I'm going to share with you shortly. The results were that research seeks to answer relevant but tough theoretical and contemporary questions. These were findings by Kirelia 2020. And that is why the project faced several challenges, including, although in most cases, financial is not considered as one of the project challenges because it is obvious, but it has been mentioned here. Then there was psychological, engineering, and time. Financial constraint challenges occurred due to uniqueness of the project, whereby costs associated with the plastic recycling may exceed the profit from recyclates. So the argument is that when you are recycling plastic, you are doing it commercially to earn profits, but also you are addressing another bigger challenge. So if we talk about the bottom line, it might not be achieved. The second challenge was psychological. What happens, especially in Kenya, is that waste is put together. Food waste, soils, plastics. So they are all put together. Now, when you ask somebody to go and sort them so that they can bring them to you and you work on them, that is a big challenge, especially when people do not have proper protective gear. The number 3 challenge was lack of proper engineering. This, I think, can be blamed on the researcher. The researcher maybe did not have enough engineering challenge. So I think this sort of ought to have been a multidisciplinary approach, so that they would have people who have got engineering knowledge. They will help in alignment of those machines which were to be developed. It could also involve chemists, so who can maybe use chemistry to try and help in processing of plastics. So it will require a multidisciplinary approach. So the results were that we have incomplete innovations. The cylinder is not complete. The saw is not complete. But I managed to complete a furnace. But the problem with that furnace is that it is producing a lot of smoke and it might not address some of the objectives. So this one is still an ongoing project. Then what now are the recommendations? The recommendations is that the manufacturers should pay attention when they are producing these plastic items. Then we need to have innovative ways to deal with this menace. And when we are considering this waste, we should look at construction, because in construction there is a lot of need. And lastly, there is need for creativity in handling this. There is a need for us to try and see how we can address this concern so that we carbon pollution. And there is also need for us to invest in plastic waste, because it is surely a profitable venture. And then, what the project noticed was that when you are handling a problem, at times you can apply scientific methods, which may not work, especially if you are lacking some knowledge. But you can still apply non-conventional systems, and then you still succeed. Like now, what happened in this project, I have developed a plastic furnace, whereby you put the plastic there, it burns itself, and then it drops on a container which has got the molding which is required, and then you get your product. Of course, it has its limitations. To give an example, it's like now when we have got the electricity, bulb, and a candle. They might be a bit different, but they give the same results. So that is all I have as far as the shrines are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Bon Patrick. Very interesting research, very innovative. Maybe we can ask the members who have been listening to give you some comments or some questions they can ask. Okay, seems there is no question, but I think this one is a very interesting area, and it will also help to achieve one of the big four agenda, that is cheap housing and so on. I think the question is, you said that it is incomplete, and there are challenges that you encounter, for example, in terms of the capacity, like let's say engineering and so on. How do you intend to meet or maybe solve those challenges?
Thank you for that question. So the issue is, first of all, the funding was limited for 1 year and the budget is fixed. However, the interest I've personally developed, I'll continue working on this project. But now in a forum like this, if somebody is still interested, that is an area which can be pursued. But I'm only recommending that if somebody pursues this discipline, it is good to do it as multidisciplinary, so that it will involve several people. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's appreciate him. Now we allow you to present the second one, briefly again.
Okay, thank you. Again, as I said, I'm Patrick. Now, I've removed the hat of a faculty. Now I'm presenting to you as a student. I'm a PhD student of Meru University. Very proud PhD student. My supervisors are one, the Dean, Dr. Shannon Mohamed, who is here. In fact, I feel very supported because she is here. My other supervisor is Professor Odhiambo Romanus, the Vice Chancellor. So I'm very proud as a student. So this is a concluded research, but I'm presenting it as a student. And the topic is sleeping on the job or poor gadgets. And we are looking at 4 years of discipline performance of companies in Kenya. Now, the background is that if you look at the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics 2018 statistical data, that is from 2014 to 2017, you realize that the Kenya population growth rate averaged 2.8. At the same time, the GDP grew at 5.5. The populations and the GDP were overtaken by inflation, which was as 6.2. The treasury bills were at 8.7. Then the real interest rates were 2.5. The real interest rates are supposed to be the difference between the nominal interest rates and the inflation. The US dollar was appreciating at 4.8%. Now, funny thing is that you look at the NIC index, it declined by 5.5%. Now, there is something which does not make sense, because if NSE is earning negative 5.5% and the treasury bills are earning 8.7%, and still people are investing in the NSE, Are they sleeping on the job? Or are these figures having a problem? So that is the question which was to be answered by this research. When we look at the statement of the problem, is that mobilization of resources is sine qua non for real capital formation. That is, there is no way you can develop the world unless you mobilize financial resources. How to mobilize financial resources? You have to move them from the borrowers to the lenders. How is that done? Mostly it is done through the securities markets, capital securities markets, like the LSE. So the stock exchange is important, as we've been told here. There is no way we are going to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals without efficient financial markets. There is this Marrakesh Action Proclamation, which requires that the transition to global low carbon economy. How do we transition unless we have proper markets? Then the green capital markets are rapid, effective, efficient, innovative capital markets that allow for sustainable increases in public savings and private capital flows towards low carbon and climate resilient investments. So capital markets are important. Studies have been conducted, but you notice one thing about some of the existing empirical methodological research on the directional impact of macroeconomic variables on performance of companies specific to Kenya economy reveals lack of clarity. They are not as clear as you are going to find in my presentation. So the objectives are now 3: to determine the negative impact of the increase in interest rates, the positive effect on increase in foreign exchange rate, and the negative outcome of increase in inflation rate on the market performance of public companies in Kenya. The conceptual framework is clear. We have got inflation, interest, and foreign exchange, which influence the performance of the market. The theory, we base it on portfolio theory. The portfolio theory was originated by Ari Markowitz, and their devices are against one thing. It tells you, please, do not carry all your eggs in one basket. Now, this theory developed a model to price assets using sigma. Sigma is a finance word which is a bit difficult, but if you look at it mathematically, it is just the standard deviation. So the capital asset pricing model of Sharpe in 1964, and it was also developed further by Rentina in 1965, replaced this sigma with the portfolio beta. And the formula for that is simple. It says that the returns of an asset will be the risk-free rate. The risk-free rate is the treasury bill rate plus some beta of that stock, and then the difference between the market return and the risk-free rate of returns. So simply put, the implication of the capital asset pricing model is that the NSE returns must not be less than the treasury bill interest rates. I conclude. So in conclusion, the methodology was that it's quantitative. We collected data from CBKN and others, and I used Microsoft Excel to get the findings, and then the findings they failed to reject the null hypothesis, so they did not support my argument. However, I can just say that they were correctly cited. If you expect something to influence another positively, and you get very slight but positive results, at least you are moving in the correct direction. Then the conclusion is that the Kenya National Bureau of Standards, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics should not be reporting crossing rates, because sincerely what came out from the study is that the findings, the results, the table was misleading. When they give you the opening NIC index and the closing NIC index, it is not a good indicator. If you want to know a good indicator, you have to tabulate it differently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for that presentation. Maybe a quick questions for Patrick. Yes, Madam Roth and Madam Mutevia.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bwana Patrick, for that informative presentation. Am I allowed to ask about the cutting? Or it's only for the...
Any question is as good as new.
Okay. Okay, so my first question is on the cutting with scissors. And I was not able to understand clearly whether the research is to be done or was done, because in your initial part of the presentation, you talk about revolving scissors that cuts plastics and molds them into shapes. So I didn't quite get whether it will be done or it was done, because the tenses kept on getting mixed up. I'm a bit lost there. On the one on KNBS, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not from the field of business. So, but my question is your final conclusion that KNBS should stop reporting the I don't know, the opening and the closing thing is. I don't know whether that is the only role that that data plays that makes you arrive at that conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know whether you...
Yes. Madam Ruth has already asked the question I was about to ask, but I still on the issue of how he has concluded. How did you draw your conclusion? How are you supporting it so that it can be authoritative? Another thing I missed on the problem statement, it didn't come out clearly.
So, would you be able to answer, or what do you think?
I will attempt to answer briefly.
Okay, please. You are short of time. You already past time, eh?
So the first question, the project was done. The deliverables was that I should make trappers, give them to contractors, they come up with the buildings, and then I take photos. And then using those photos, I'll ask people whether they are finding the ceilings to be more attractive using the trappers I've developed against whatever is done conventionally. So I achieved that. But the problem I did not achieve using the products and intentions to make, like I intention to make those scissors. So I've not succeeded in developing the scissors fully. So that is that. The second thing, the question on my conclusions regarding reporting by Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. I think that body is not in charge of anything else. This should disseminate meaningful information. Now the question is this. If you tell me the bananas in January were 10 shillings and in December they were 100 shillings, is that informative? Yes. But if through like the stand I can show you that it is not correct, because in between January and December, they have moved between 1,000 to 2,000 to 7,000, then you realize that the information at the opening and closing is normally not enough. So that is my key argument. There are some obvious statistics. For example, the population. If the population of Kenya in January is 10 million, and in December it is 11 million, one is growth, because movement has been obvious. But if you look now at the NSE, the movement of share prices, there is no clear-cut line. So if you give the opening and closing, you might actually be misleading. It is good to calculate the returns for that year using the financially available tools and report that.
So they should stop completely reporting, or they should modify their report?
I might not answer that question right now, but I'm saying I'm finding a problem. The way they are reporting, I think is misleading at least. Yes. Because otherwise, if it is not misleading, then every investor who invested in the NSE was sleeping on their job. Otherwise, they would have just bought the treasury bills. Thank you. Your question, I think, is a bit tough. I will have to try and digest it. Thank you. Yes.
Your research is meant to sort a certain issue.
Yes.
What was the problem you are sorting? Your problem statement.
Yes.
It did come up well.
Okay, maybe if I can explain very briefly. Well, so briefly what we are saying is that if you look at the capital asset pricing model, it says the returns you expect. For example, if you invest in Kenya Airways shares, should be what the treasury bill is paying. Right now, this government is currently paying 16% per annum on treasury bills. So, would you invest in Kenya Airways shares to pay you 10%? You wouldn't do that. So, if now you are finding that Kenya Airways are paying 10% and still people are buying those shares, you really wonder whether this reported 10% is the one which is a problem, or you are the one who is having a problem because you are not understanding it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take us just 5 minutes. Take us through the last one.
Okay. So this one, as I've been directed, I'm presenting as a student. It should also have come actually in the pre-conference, so I will be very brief. So this one is my proposal as a PhD student with my valued supervisors. So, and it is the impact of market liquidity on growth of equity returns in Kenya. So in the previous presentation, I was looking at the independent variable, that is the market returns. But now I want to look at the impact of market liquidity on the growth of equity returns in Kenya. Now, based also on the same capital asset pricing model, the price of any share reflects the market fundamentals. Mostly we are talking about inflation, interest rates, we are talking about employment and foreign exchange, although there are other fundamentals like taxation and others. Now we are saying liquidity is important, also other than the fundamentals. I want just to get out of the presentation and look at something which is very popular here in Kenya, mango in particular, bananas. So if you have 10 shillings and you go to the market, you can buy one piece of banana, ripe banana. Immediately after you have bought it for 10 shillings, can you sell it for 10 shillings? No, most of these are the difference, because there is a buying price and there is a selling price. So if you can buy it at 10 shillings and sell it at 11 shillings, the difference is 1. That was on Monday. You go Tuesday, you buy at 10 and you sell at 12. Is the problem the banana or the market? Maybe the problem is the market. It is the way the market is required. So we are talking about market liquidity. You can have an item, but when you go to the market, you find the market has a problem. It is not required. So one dimension of liquidity is the width, which is the difference between the cost and the sales price. Then the second dimension of a market is resiliency. If you go with to the market and you want to buy one banana at 10 shillings, but there is somebody who has supplied 1 million bananas that particular day, what do you think will happen? Because of high supply, the price of the banana will just drop. How long will it drop? It will depend on the market. Number 3 is number 2, I'm saying that even if it is influenced, then it will have to revert. It can revert very fast or it can revert very slowly. Number 3 is quantity. If somebody has supplied a lot of bananas in the market, you might find that they are distorting the price. Then number 3, if you go to sell bananas today on Monday, you might spend the whole day in the market because there is nobody who is buying, or they are buying at a big interval. But you might go on Tuesday, immediately you arrive at the market, somebody asks for all of them, and you go back home. So you find that there is little time spent on that market on that day. Lastly is behavioral finance. If you are interested to run on this, you can search a standing by criteria on campus lenders who are found to be too generous. So even when you go to the market, you might sell a banana to somebody at 10 shillings, they give you 50 shillings, and they ask you to keep change. That is human behavior. So these are the dimensions of market liquidity, and I'm going to try and show them on my conceptual framework. If there are some problems, my supervisor has asked me to change some of the things you are finding there, but I'm going to do it in due course. So we have got the dimensions of market liquidity. We have got the depth, we have got the width, we have got the immediacy, we have got the resiliency, and then we have got the perceptions. So the argument actually I want to put across is this. If you go to the NSE, or you go to New York Stock Exchange, or you go maybe to Somali Stock Exchange, they are not going to be operating at the same level. They are operating at different levels of liquidity. And even if you are selling the same thing, you find that it is not moving the same way. So that is the key concern of my standing. Then why am I doing this standing? First of all, I'm saying that it is important because capital markets are important. Number 2 is that those who have done liquidity, they are focused on few dimensions, mostly look at the depth and the width. But you can see in my stand, I am looking at the depth, width, immediacy, resiliency. I'm even giving it a people's touch so that I see the way people feel about it. And then I will be able to see how they affect the growth in equity returns. There are several research gaps which have been identified, and then the methodology used is qualitative and quantitative. It will describe data and also establish the causal relationships between the variables. It will be conducted in all the counties, and we have got 2 sets of data. One will be gotten from data vendors, the other one will be a questionnaire for perception. So maybe I can conclude with the model, which will be that we want to get and grow the equity, which is as a result of those 5 variables, and then the error term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonacrede, for that presentation. This is a PhD proposal. Maybe let's add value to this. Any question, any comments for them? seems there are no questions or comments. So we can appreciate him because he had presented 3 articles as he leaves. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, everyone. We have come to the end of these presentations, this session. So I would like to request Dr. Agnes to pray for us. We close with a word of prayer and then as we leave.
Let us, I don't know whether we stand, but we can stand. So we can all end up with our prayer. Father, in the name of Jesus, we are grateful this evening for enabling us to reach you. We've reached the whole day since morning. We thank you that you've given us the strength, the grace, the participation since morning. At this time, as we are praying in the morning, we've seen you go with us at this time. Therefore, we are grateful. We want to say thank you. We thank you for all the participants and everyone that has participated in today's conference. We ask that Lord will bless them. We've now come to the end of today. We pray that as we depart from this place, your presence will go with us till we meet tomorrow, to the glory and to the honor of your name. For this we pray and give thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Much.